The process of distinguishing science from superstition had begun, and the great minds of the era dedicated themselves to this work.
We're going to now talk about reform. I didn't want to talk about reform. We've done a lot of it over the past week or so. I've been told on NX, are you just now a totally anti-Farage, anti-reform man? But they are the gift that keeps on giving at the moment. Here is the opportunity of a political party that
on the right, suck up the entire right,
sucks up the whole right, gives us the opportunity to take out the Uniparty, gives us the chance to think, yes, we finally got change, and people are not only flocking to them as members, helping them on the streets, their voters are coming with them because they're sick and tired. And there is an ideology about it. We're strong on immigration. We are concerned about the rise of Islam in this country. We're spending far too much. We want to control, all of these...
All completely reasonable
things, and that's what they say. And then they appoint a new chairman, which I said is not really a chairman. I think he's the head of membership. And that is Dr. David Bull, who, I kind of pass him every now and again when I'm going onto the Talk TV thing on a weekend. Generally...
sure he's a lovely chap.
Lovely, affable guy, but he's named as the new chairman, and which I think is funny in the first instance, isn't it? When Nigel Farage says, I'm going to announce a new chairman, and Zia Youssef is going off to look after Dogue, but he'll also look after all the fundraising, the job of the chairman. He's also going to deal with all the administration, head of the chairman. He's dealing with the policy of the chairman, and he'll be my limb.
Yeah, right-hand man.
My right-hand man.
Yeah. Shadow chairman.
Job of the chairman, isn't it? So anyway, David Bull has just announced that all he's going to do is wander around the country just talking to members.
I mean, someone's got to do it, I suppose.
Yeah. That's the new definition of chairman for all political parties, is the head of membership.
I've heard the members aren't happy, so someone needs to.
No, he's hugely excited by this, apparently.
Okay.
And he says, I did realise the only way I was to resign and then come back, he joked. So he's doing another joke about resigning and coming back. So he's announced. But amongst his first interviews, I think this is where we're now beginning to see the real heart of the leadership, or at least the top tier individuals within reform.
Well, just a quick thing here before we move on. Everyone was like, "Oh, who's the new chairman going to be?" It's like, look, there are about 3 people that Nigel has to choose from at this point.
Yeah,
it's going to be like Lee Anderson, Richard Tice, David Bull, or Aaron Banks. Right?
Exactly.
There's he's got no one else around him. There's no other talent. There's no one loyal to him. He has carved everyone else off.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we'll just roll a dice. You're going to pick someone. Anyway, sorry.
So or maybe it's the Lebanese millionaire that will come to. Or
maybe, yeah.
That maybe wouldn't have sent off the right pictures. But knowing Nigel, what he's done, he's got Zia, who's the Muslim, and David, who's the gay person. So now we've got the LGBT and Islam, and I'm neither racist or homophobic.
Well done, Nigel. You've got it. They'll never accuse you again.
No, they won't.
That addresses all of my concerns.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't care about policy. It just works for the BBC. It works for ITV. It works for Sky. So therefore, everything's good in the world.
Finally, the libs will leave me alone. Yeah. Oh, shut up, Nigel.
I might be able to go to Hawksmoor and have a steak without being kicked out.
Yeah.
That's it.
God.
Yeah, I'm not those dirty people of the right.
It's so supine. It's so pathetic.
So here we go. Hang on. This is the first point. Maybe it's come down there. We've got through what he's supposed to have said. Hours after he's come, I think it's just flipped out, but I'll go back to it then, is that David Bull then turns around in his first interview, and I'm certain when we were putting this up, Carl, you had it on the video on there, so I don't know if it was one of the other ones we've got it in the
is it the Lifeblood of Britain?
Yeah, where he... I think this is the one it is. I must have gotten the wrong way around here. David Bull turns around and says that immigration is the lifeblood of the country. I mean, I just want to listen to this.
Are there any other items of clothing that you think are a threat to public safety?
So I think that the key for me about this is it's about integrating into this country. Immigration is the lifeblood of this country. It always has been. But also, if you come to this country, you have to adopt our culture, our system.
Sounds like David Cameron.
Yes.
Like, oh my God.
I tweeted out yesterday in reaction to this, far from being the lifeblood of the country, it's actually put the country on life support.
It's poisoning us.
That is a very good line.
Yeah, it's killing our country.
It is, but even the idea that it's the lifeblood, to me, is like simply saying that the blood of immigrants has been running all the way through the veins of the United Kingdom, of England, Scotland and Wales.
But also we die without them.
And that's it. We die without it. Since the days of Alfred and Ethelstan, and even before that, before the idea. Yes, no one will argue that as the rocks were moving apart from Europe and coming back again, a few Celts came over from the steppes of the Middle and crossed over and lived.
How many thousands of years back?
That's about 12 or 14,000.
Exactly.
Then we join up again, and of course, then we had Celts, and then the Brits and the Romans came over here, and all
2,000 years ago.
2,000, and there was only about 5,000 of them, and they just subjugated us. That's fine to be slaves.
Well, to be fair, if he wants to compare immigration to conquest, then fine.
But then what's the argument with the Romans and, of course, the Mexicans losing a war in California?
But we've done genetic testing in Britain. There's just been no significant genetic impact on the British people since the Anglo-Saxon migrations.
Yeah, the big change was around 52 to 55, and even that was relatively small. It was tailing off until Blair decided that the whole country was going to explode with 1.3 million asylum applicants in 1 year, in the year 2000. And so to him to argue that from the years of Ethelstan onwards, someone's got 1066 there in Dan, I'd go a bit further back than that, if you wouldn't mind, to 1945, and I'd go a little bit later, is that, there's no way that one can argue that immigration, we have some good points, Huguenots.
It was mostly emigration.
Yeah, Huguenots over...
mostly it's Britons emigrating to the rest of the world.
Yeah, 20,000 Huguenots, they did contribute, significantly.
20,000 Huguenots.
Yeah, but over 50,000 over 20 years or something like that.
20,000 French Protestants.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
So you cannot argue that they are the lifeblood of this country. You can argue that they're important at the moment, that they're vital in certain areas, unfortunately, because we've had large-scale immigration. But the argument that they're a lifeblood is wrong, because if they all left or they all stopped, would this country die?
No, we'd be fine.
No.
I think things would get better.
And in that one line, it just shows a total ignorance that is akin to... It shows no understanding of why the Tories are essentially in existential death mode.
Yeah, 100%.
And it also misunderstands the whole point that there is a massive argument and discussion going in this country between people who've come here for several generations. That immigration is a discussion on most tables about it and all across the workplace, not about race or religion. To a certain extent, religion is coming into that on the creed, but it's all about numbers and the implications and impacts on this nation. So to turn around and say it's racist about that is a nonsense. Only those who are extreme would argue that.
It doesn't even matter. That's not the question. I mean, he points out, well, it's about integration. Okay, that ship sailed.
Yeah.
The integration ship has sailed. Now in London, we're getting signs up in Urdu or whatever.
Nothing left to integrate.
Bengali. Yeah, exactly. That it's over. The integration argument is over. But sorry.
It's okay, but I'm just saying that who is David Bull and what is he representing? And he then goes on to double down on this. Having got the opportunity to say it early on, he then doubles down on GB News later on the evening.
We are an island of immigrants.
Oh, shut up.
Right. Now, I remember that was a Labour MP's Home Secretary under Blair that first argued that we're an island of immigrants, and that is palpably untrue. I mean, it's one of the things I've been working on for a while, potential book that eventually will come out towards the end of the year, that flags not only the genetic code through DNA, but actually the historical numbers coming into this country, the emigration that went on involved in that. So this is palpably untrue. The idea that we're an island of immigrants only started to become conceptually true is when we had large numbers coming in after 55. 52 to 55 was the starting point. And
even then, that was 1-2% of the population.
Absolutely.
So small. It really is until the late 90s where the numbers start ramping up.
But even this whole, you're an island of immigrants, therefore you must have immigration. It doesn't matter, regardless of what the history is, because also it's there's this idea that, well, that's historically who we've been. so it must continue, even though it's not true. And then it becomes, well, you have to have it to atone for the empire. Yeah. Okay, does Ireland have to have it? Does Sweden have to have it? It ultimately, it's all nonsense. It's just nonsense. We want this to happen to you, and we will concoct whatever irrational reason we can muster.
Unless they keep moving from reason to reason when you're like, that's not true. Yeah. Okay, I've got another one. It's like, no. Why are we having this conversation? Yeah. You just want to take what's ours for someone else. Yes. Not having it. The answer's no.
Yeah, and what this is showing is not only just the discussions of the background of where it all comes from, the philosophical and practical issues about why this is wrong, but it's showing him to be, as you say, in one way, very much a Labour person with the Island of Immigrants, one way a David Cameronite, with a lifeblood.
Blairite.
And you're asking yourself, who is this man? I'll whip through a couple of these. 9-year-olds should be taught what it means to be LGBT in school.
The argument on this is he's posting the headline, so maybe he doesn't endorse this. Maybe he's alerting people.
Okay,
right?
possibly.
But if you scroll down the list, there's a thread here that like LGBT Armed Forces Ball in Manchester. So right, okay. So LGBT is a communist method to try and create a constituency that can attack the majority heterosexual community, expressly by the people who designed the term LGBT.
Yeah, right. There I am, David Cameron. I'm proud to legacy of LGBT rights. Yeah. Now, every one of us, we would turn around and say, this is perfectly fine to have the same rights as an equal individual. I've campaigned, I've done exactly the same sort of things, but the ideology of what it is, particularly with the trans element coming in.
But even then, I'm not even sure if I agree. I'm not even sure if I'm for gay marriage, to be honest.
We can have the argument that they're still human beings, and we don't have an issue with them for being
Sure. I'm not suggesting any persecution or anything, but there are certain institutions that are important for reasons that are frankly not for the people involved in them, right? Like marriage is there for children. It's important for the children. So for to be like, oh well, gay people want to get married, it's like, yeah, but they can't have children. It's not really for them, And I'm not saying anything should happen to them or anything like that. But I'm not saying I'm even committed to this. But there's an argument to be had there and discussion to be had about it being not just for you. It's for others.
Yeah, and I'm on the view that obviously with children, I've seen my own children. I don't think much of anything to talk about sex or sexuality should really be taught about them at primary school level. No. I'm perfectly happy to bring in sex education when they're slightly older, particularly as my daughter, 12, came as shock when the natural bodily functions changed for her, and it's like all of that. You then start to understand they're becoming adults rather than the little people that they are. I don't want indoctrination of children, and yet David seems to be happy to have this level of questioning coming in, and others have pointed out exactly what he is on this. Sex education, we need Twitter silence, all of this. Germany's chancellor has made a brave... I found this one fascinating. On refugees, Germany's chancellor is brave, decisive, and right.
Oh, right, so Merkel bringing in millions of foreigners to be flung on the Germans. That's good. Yeah. I mean, look at this. Inclusive sex ed is important and must be compulsory. I don't agree with that at all. I'm actually getting to the point where I don't really want sex education in schools. That's, I think, the parents' responsibility, frankly. And I don't really trust some lefty teacher not to try and pervert my children.
Well, this is the element about trust in there and how we know and whether we should have rights as parents to at least understand what the curriculum is and how far they're going on that.
Look at the one, sorry, just the one below. We need Twitter to silence LGBT hate.
Yes.
All right, so we're just open for censorship now. Homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia have no place online, says a radical leftist. That's what a radical leftist says.
Exactly. So what we have here in Dr. David Bull is someone who's now the chairman of Reform, who's pretty much advocating the opposite of what is true about immigration and cultures in this country. Radical leftist ideology on all the others and supporting Merkel's monumental madness of mass immigration into Germany.
This is crazy.
You now have that, and they turn around to us and say, you're just trying to bring reform down. You're just criticising reform for reform's sake. No, I'm criticising the individuals at the charge who are supposed to advocate your policies. And if this is what they believe in, where's the trust?
This is the total destruction of reform's credibility as a right-wing party. Right? This is not right-wing. This is not conservative. This is not something I could ever vote for.
This is everything that drove us away from the conventional party.
This is why the Conservatives are dying, as you pointed out. This is why Labour are awful. This is why the Lib Dems are irrelevant.
If you want to be exactly the same as Labour, Lib Dems, Green, and the Conservatives... do this and join them.
Yeah.
You know, be that party, but don't be something that the people are crying out for something totally different. And I would say, okay, let's be rational. This is David. He's just been brought in last minute. You know, he's only, as you say, Carl, one of the few individuals that could possibly be used in that role. Has his own independent mind to be able to undertake the functions of being a membership committee chairman. So is it just him? And then you have this from Nigel. The weakening. How would you define a Welsh person? Someone who's lived there for 5 to 10 years.
Can we listen to this? Because this is actually, he's being very slippery in this.
You say that you would like to give priority to people from Wales for housing. How would you define a Welsh person?
Well, it's a very fair question from your channel. We hadn't proposed the Welsh language test. No, look, it's got to be somebody who's lived and is settled in Wales, has paid taxes and obeyed the law. And if someone's done that for a 5 or 10 year period, then I think they've every right to say that they're fully part of the Welsh community.
So there are a couple of things on this, right? She didn't ask, what does it take to be a part of the Welsh community?
No.
You know, like your dog will be part of the Welsh community. That doesn't make them Welsh, right? So he's been slippery there. But really what she's saying is, okay, well, what is a Welshman? How do you define them? And Farage is just, well, if they've lived there for 5, 10 years, they followed the law, so no criminal record, and paid taxes.
Yeah.
So if you're disabled, you don't have a job, you're not Welsh. If you commit a crime, if you've tax fraud or something, you're not Welsh. Or if you leave Wales for a substantive period of time, you're no longer Welsh.
The Welsh can be criminals too.
Yeah, well, but like if you,
that's right. If you commit a crime, you cease to be Welsh.
Yeah. Well, but you move to England for 10 years for work or something, you're not Welsh anymore. You can't come back. Sorry.
I'm therefore Welsh because I spent 3 years at university in Aberystwyth. Then I lived in Colwyn Bay and Llandudno for 3 years. They weren't joined together. It was 3 years and 3 years.
You're as Welsh as they come.
Therefore, siarad Cymraeg, dim ysmygwr. I am Welsh.
It's
nonsense.
Preposterous.
My friend living in Japan for 5 years who's paid taxes has not just become Japanese.
He's absolutely Japanese.
But suddenly you're going to define that. How would you define an English person? Someone who's lived there for 5 to 10 years.
Exactly.
How would you define someone who's a Scots person? Someone who's lived there for 5 to 10 years.
The Boris wave. Yeah. English.
That's right.
And so this means that basically there are no English expats in Spain, right? No, they're all Spanish now.
That's right.
They're all Spanish.
They're not expats.
Yes,
that's right.
Exactly. They're not expats. They're Spanish as the day is long. And the answer, of course, is how do you define a Welsh person? Someone with Welsh ancestry is what a Welsh person.
And not even here. He's just said someone who's lived there for 5 to 10 years. If you're an illegal asylum seeker who's lived there for 5 to 10 years and never been caught, if you don't have indefinite leave to remain and a British passport, you are now Welsh as well. This shows the nonsense of policy for Nigel Farage, his lack of intellectual capability being able to understand it, how he thinks he can get away with just bonhomie, we didn't do the Welsh language test, did we? You don't need an English test to be in England either, by the way, that's it. It is showing him for the weaknesses in intellectual capability of running the argument for patriotic political party.
But the problem is, this is Sadiq Khan's definition of what a Londoner is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is Sadiq Khan's globo homo definition of, open borders, infinite migrants. That's the same that Nigel Farage has adopted here. This is preposterous.
So now on immigration, you're the lifeblood. You only have to be there 5 to 10 years. Yeah. And you're there for someone who is capable of then, remember this is about housing policy.
Yeah.
So if someone comes here in Britain for 5 to 10 years, in any way, shape or form, you're now that nationality and therefore capable of receiving housing.
It's literally magic soil theory.
Yeah, that's it. But is that alone?
No.
This was me. I think.
Well, this connects quite well with it, really.
Because
if Nigel Farage, if 1 million people can be brought from, there was a Welsh MP or whatever they call the constituency MPs, who was like, oh yeah, we should be bringing in millions of Afghan women to save them from the burqa and being Afghani. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well then they would become just as Welsh, even though there are 3 million Welsh and 41 million Afghans. So, and then this ties nicely into this, doesn't it? When Richard Tice,
absolutely. This is then going on to the next individual. Yeah. Richard Tice is an MP. as we said, could he have been the chairman? He was once the vice chairman under Ben Habib. We're talking about immigration again, so we've now looked at different policies ranged from David Bull. We've now seen the immigration argument of what is a citizen of this country from Nigel Farage in a recent interview. And then we're talking about, are you concerned that there will be a minority British white British? Is that a concern to you? And Richard Tice says it's a long way off. I'll be long gone. I'll be long gone.
Richard Tice has 3 kids.
I don't give two flying whatevers about what's going to happen to my country. I'll be long gone, but please keep me in as an MP. I just like the idea of being able to flaunt myself with those 2 letters after my name. It can go down in history and on Wikipedia that I was an MP, but I'll be long gone.
And my children won't suffer because they're in the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah. Yes.
Everyone around them will be Welsh or English because they'll have been here for 5 or 10 years. Yeah. So I don't know what your objection is, you bigot.
Yes. And so what we've got, he doesn't bear any responsibility for his behaviour. And this is going to the issue of trust. Now, do we trust them when we say that they want to be capable of managing the big issues politically in this country, of which one of those big issues is how do you manage immigration, the large numbers coming into it, the criminality, the cost, the economic issues, and the social changes that are happening in a way that preserves the rights of this nation and also ensures that we don't go under. And the trust issue's there. I'll be long gone. It says everything about the man.
The thing is, I trust that is his honest opinion, frankly.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here? We're not looking at a right-wing party. We're not looking at a party that cares about the British people at all.
Oh, well, I'll whip through a couple because I'm looking at the time and there's far few. But I then said, okay, so we've now looked at, schools, education, sexuality, kind of the family concept, what is a nationality, immigration. Then one of the big issues at the moment is the burqa, and he's now the new chairman, and David, again, straight away out of that. I've replaced Zia Youssef, who said, I didn't really want to ban the burqa, but now I said,
he called it dumb.
He said it was dumb, and he said, that was dumb. And then he came back and said, I'm phlegmatic about it. It's all right. It'll be fine. But David Bull goes back and says, no, we shouldn't.
So he's got the exact same opinion as Zia Youssef on the burqa.
Zia Youssef on there. No to banning the burqa.
So this is interesting because I don't think, one, the burqa ban wouldn't work. And it doesn't matter because if the demographics change, they'll just simply re-implement it. But also it's for David's opinion to be, no, we're not banning it, speaks in contradiction to his own stated opinion of forced assimilation, of integration. It's like, okay, well, if you're an integrationist, why aren't you making them look and appear as British as you can?
I completely missed that as well.
I did. So again, it goes to that juxtaposition of who he actually is. Is he just saying these lines because that's genuinely what he believes? And that's what I think he is genuinely being who he is, a Cameronite, a Blairite, but nothing to do with a genuine pro-patriotic party.
No, they're an international liberal party. They're a globalist party.
So we've now gone through a number 3 or 4 different policy issues, and of course Islam now steps into one. Farage suspends a reform candidate for claiming Islam is a false religion. Now,
that is remarkable.
Well, every Christian, as World by Wolf points out, it has in our religious tenets, by definition, believes Islam is a false religion.
But every religion believes every other religion is
a false religion. So therefore, if you believe in freedom of religion, which is another political issue, another conceptual idea of what conservatism should be about, a modern pro-conservative party, should be about accepting the Christian concepts and allowing them to be able to believe in what Christianity is without receiving the big hand of your political leader firing you for it.
I mean, the normative characteristics of the British people should allow to a certain affirmative vision of what they are.
But also, if she'd said Buddhism is a false religion, would Farage have kicked her out? Probably not. I don't think he'd have cared.
No.
Right? Which means that Islam has a privileged position in reform, making reform essentially an Islamic party. If you're not allowed to say Islam is a false religion, but you won't get kicked out for saying Christianity is a false religion, then it's an Islamic party.
and I'm just finding this quite bizarre, in that obviously we've got to look at why the left is not picking up on this and the Conservatives are not picking up on this, because they all believe it themselves.
Yeah, they all agree
exactly
with it.
the same. And the press are giving Farage an easy ride. But the cultists within Farage are believing it. And he says many Britons are converting to Islam. This is, as he was, the chairman of Reform UK is a Muslim born in Scotland with Sri Lankan origins. Islam is eating up the UK inch by inch. And Farage goes on why Islam is getting stronger on there. I don't know if we've got time to play. I mean, let's try it. Let's go through.
This Archbishop is turning people away from religion, certainly from the Church of England, in their droves. Many are just giving up on religion completely.
A lot of people are converting to Islam, aren't they? Have you noticed that as well?
Yes, there is a bit of a trend with that. Islam's a very complicated one because there are clearly sects that are compatible and we would respect equally, because Islam doesn't have a proper head. There are elements of it that are very worrying and very scary.
Wow.
I don't know if a lot of people are converting to Islam, though.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't believe that they are.
Unless you're being forced to imprison, but let's see if you can survive like Tommy Robinson. Otherwise, you convert. Yeah. But what I wanted to look at this is there are sects that are okay, and there are sects that are not okay. So some of the
sake of time, I'm afraid we're going to have to push on.
So again, I'm pointing out the issues of here: lack of understanding of a bigger issue,
lack of courage,
issues of chilling warning over Muslim population. We'll politically alienate. We will lose.
Completely convinced that Islam will just crush us and we'll have.
That's right.
We just can't fight back. Okay.
So giving Islam a privileged position over all other religions and those who are atheists and agnostics.
Best we can hope for is a managed, orderly surrender.
Yep. That's it. That's it. That's really what Churchill said, didn't he, when Hitler was crossing over? Okay. I maybe I'm being a bit sad on this, but I just found this particularly funny. I mean, I thought the beard was particularly well kept, to be honest, looking at it, and it really did blend in with the tie. But, this is what people are beginning to think about Farage. Yeah. They're beginning to see him because he is not saying things that enables people to say, hang on a minute, I thought you were of the patriotic right, and you're not recognising some of the big issues.
No, he's not.
And then
he's a liberal.
I come across, I think, is that?
That's the one we're on now.
That's the one there. Sorry, I just clicked the one.
Yeah.
He then talks about economically, I was going to final points about it. He talks about the population explosion is leading to the declining living standards. Mm-hmm. So his answer to that is an employer immigration tax. Again, not dealing with the issue.
Yeah.
Let's hit the businesses that he says are struggling to be able to sustain itself. So economically, he is not of the right anymore. We've got this, who banged on about under influence of the World Economic Forum, and yet we do know that Bassem Haider has got a major influence behind the scenes with Zia Youssef, who brought him in, and they're both members of the World Economic Forum. Nigel talks about the elites in charge, and yet he's bringing them in. And I think I'm just going to finish on this point, all the different policies. Farage on Gaza, a wonderful, thriving place with well-paid jobs, casinos, nightlife. It seems like very appealing to me on there. He's an economic and social liberal. I mean, irrespective of the rights of the Gaza, all I see Gaza is a nice place to have a party.
It needs to be developed like real estate.
Yeah, that's right. And so this isn't now politics are current. All the different policies that we've looked at, the people in charge of reform, they've imploded. And I think you're rightly to point out.
Yeah, they've just completely lost all their credibility, frankly. It's just mental.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.